Hello everyone and welcome to Centre Never Apart. We are very excited to have all of our femme realness artists here, and we are going to conduct a panel discussion. So to start things out, I would like everyone to say who they are and what their work is in the show, starting up here with you guys.
So my name's Andy and this is Chris, and we are Anzias Ceramics. We've done a series of sculptural pieces to fit into the theme of the show.
Like Andy said, I'm Chris.
My name is Jean-François. I'm GF Photo and I do pop-up.
Okay, and then John?
I'm John Simone. I did part of the Femme Realness show, the images mostly from New York City in the late 80s.
Hi, I'm George Stamos. The piece that I have in the show is called The Waiting Room, and it's a video piece.
I'm Nicholas Contreras. I'm from New York. I'm in Femme Realness, and I have a series of photographs of a series of mine called The Look Goes As Follows, and 3 other separate photographs that fit into Femme Realness.
Nicholas, how does your work fit into the theme of the show, Femme Realness?
My work has it has a feminine male gaze upon sexuality and gender. Mostly, I focus on particular people within New York's club scene and nightlife, where it's not only drag, but it's this middle ground of pushing gender roles. A lot of it has to do with like the feminine male. I feel like my work fits perfectly because it talks about the gender binary and the construct of gender and how we as gay men have the ability to really mess with that. And I think that's how I fit perfectly.
Cool. George?
I think that the piece that I have in the show, in some ways, it kind of goes against what we would usually think of as femme realness in terms of, we think of femme realness as trans passing, for example, or something, because it's much more of a look at something outside of the binary like you were mentioning, and sort of challenging this idea of just masculine, feminine, because there's more of a fluidity in terms of masculinity and femininity, but certainly there's some male bodies on display, an older male body and a younger male body. They're both feminine in many attributes, and but they're definitely representing other. They're not fitting into a masculine, feminine mold.
Femme Realness? Okay. Well, my work includes some of the most famous homosexuals in arts and culture. From their first, most infamous, I think, femme celebrity, Quentin Crisp. He was the most famous effeminate homosexual, obvious homosexual in Soho since the 1930s. And then you get to Divine, which is sort of the most famous drag queen, until you get to RuPaul. And that's it.
No, my turn.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. As for my work, I don't know. I guess, sorry, I'm French, so I'll try to do my best in English. But I think the work that I do will always varies. Yeah, it varies a lot because I do a lot of different things. But there's a lot of models or concepts that I will go into which kind of describe the stereotype of gays people are sometimes scared or don't want to see in the community, and I'm so comfortable using that as an image and creating something with this. So
Our work is fairly inspired by 50s and 60s housewares, and those were traditionally things that were displayed in like the family home. So like the mother, the father.
China cabinet.
Sure, yeah, and so we like playing on the idea of taking those objects and just gayifying them.
I
And
love gayification.
yeah, and we love the idea of just displaying your gayness on your wall and in your home.
I also think with us, the medium of porcelain is a really fun thing to play with for the theme of this show, because it has that fragility and also a sense of preciousness. And the pieces we chose to put in the show, we play with flamboyancy and beauty and ornamentation.
Although all of your work is very different, different mediums, different eras, all of that, there are common threads that sort of link the whole show together. I wanted to get your guys' opinion. Now that you've all met and seen each other's work, how do you feel that there is sort of a common pink thread that binds you all together?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing is we're all gay men, and and we seem to all be very proud gay men. So I guess yeah, we're making gay art for proud gay men.
Well, it is true what he said, but also we're kind of like, we're the window to the rest of the world, you know, like not a lot of people will do the kind of things we do. I mean, you probably wouldn't see an heterosexual like doing the kind of things we do. There might be, but like it's not as common. So we're kind of we're this window to show the world that, you know, it's okay to portrait or display those kinds of people in art, or I mean ceramic or sculptures, you know.
What do you guys think down there?
I was thinking something, Nicholas said something, I thought if I was straight, I wouldn't have been doing those kind of photos. I wouldn't have been interested in the crazy people in the nightclubs and the drag queens. So thank God I'm gay.
I think all of the work speaks to a kind of other take on masculinity and on being gay, other than a conservative, heteronormative, masculine, gay culture. And I think that in the last at least 100 years, probably, I don't know, before that, there's been this tension between, inside the gay community, and as the gay community's formed, there's been this tension and dialogue between the gays that want to be more conservative and gain more acceptance by conservative people and then the ones that are more radical. And I think that we're leaning towards radical, although I think so.
Yeah.
I think we're not, it's not a conservative show. So I think that's a thread that brings us together.
Well, I guess it's, when I think about the show, I think about it's, with all the work, it's like a romanticized talk about one's own self-confidence with it as a gay male. The people we photograph, even when it comes down to your guys' work, which is, you know, ceramics, it's this talk about, you know, one's own self-indulgence of like their own confidence to be exactly who they want to be. And through that, I think we all play with this feminine role with either the people we take portraits of, or if it's a self-portrait or a self-video, it has this exude of confidence to be exactly who we, or what we want the art to be. So I feel like that is what really strings it along. Because the whole thing is about, is this play on gender, but when you get down to it, I think it's this role of confidence that exudes through our work.
I mean, in society, being effeminate is looked down upon, looked at as being less of a male, and to me that's misogyny. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done within culture in general, but we're also faced within gay culture. There's internalized homophobia as well with being effeminate and things like that. So I think that this show is really important to sort of spotlight that, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on those subjects.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna play right off that with the thought in my head. The one thing I'm most known for is I go around as a butch queen, so I really play upon my own like feminine roles, because the first thing you see me as is this bearded, beefier, hairier, muscular guy until I open my mouth and a purse falls out. And so, and I really like to play with that, through it's a Louis clutch too that falls out of my mouth.
War.
from Canal Street, and so it's not. Through this body of work, and my own body of work, I wasn't able to 4 years ago have this sense of confidence to play with my, I understand my own masculinity, but by photographing these people and seeing work like this, it gives me more confidence to play with my own femininity. I don't wake up every day saying, I'm a very feminine male, but I have the confidence to play with that. And I think it's very important to, show the community that, you don't have to be X, Y, and Z. You don't have to be butch. You don't have to be, extremely femme. You can be whatever you want to be and what feels comfortable to you. And now, 4 years later of doing my work and working with, people who are so confident within their own gender realms, it's gotten me to the point where, I can play with my own feminine side as much as my masculine side. George.
Hallelujah.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely misogyny in the world, and that also impacts the way that inside the gay community, the feminine gay men are looked down upon. The piece that I have there is from 20 years ago, and I edited it and dealt with it and processed this recently, but the footage is from 20 years ago. And it took me a long time to deal with some of the feelings. I didn't actually feel really proud about the encounter or the behavior or the image of me writhing around in a kind of sloppy way on this chaise lounge. And in some of the things that I needed to process that became part of the process of creating the piece was looking at shame, and also how shame being something that's different from guilt, shame being more not being I did something wrong, but I am something wrong,
Yeah.
and how deep that can affect you and your relationship to the world. And so for me, there's a gaining, it's a shedding of shame in displaying this, and I kind of decided to turn it into a joke, partially with the GIF effect, and to embrace this younger, more feminine side, because now I'm just so masculine, No, but anyway, yeah. So that's kind of speaks to that, I guess.
I think, if I can just go off of what you're saying, I think the word shame is really important because I don't think if you didn't feel in the core that this was at some point shameful, or you felt shame or felt that was wrong, it wouldn't bring importance to the work for all of us to make. Like we as artists bring, like as a photographer, I'm saying this person is important. This is why I'm photographing him, and this is why I believe others need to view him. So I think shame is a really good context of like understanding the core underneath everyone's work too.
New York in the late '80s was there was lots of tragedy, lots of people dying, but at the same time, the scene became pro-sex. People were positive of expressing themselves. It was also mixed. You didn't go to a gay bar. You went to one of the big clubs or one of the small clubs, and everybody was there. So it wasn't that thing about, and then when you have people like RuPaul and other, performers, they are the new role models. So when I present my work, I think I'm trying to show the younger generation that this isn't anything new, and it was a long forebears and before you, and it's just that's how how I felt doing it. I thought these were role models to me. I mean, I loved Divine, I loved Quentin Crisp, and then to be able to meet them and interact with them, that was empowered me, I think. The most interesting people too, So.
What do you guys appear to think?
Well, I know growing up, and I think Andy has had the same experience, we have been called like pansy and fag and that kind of thing. But really, when I was younger, the most positive role models that I saw in movies were like Madonna's backup dancers in Truth or Dare, or drag queens in Paris is Burning, and so those were sort of my role models as a younger person. And we do a lot of work that has words in like the plates that we have. We have words that were used in Paris is Burning, and so we like reclaiming those really gay things and mixing them into our work.
Yeah, and we sort of like to try to take those elements of shame and present them in a way that's really, really beautiful, and it's easy to put on your shelf and sort of celebrate. A lot of the work we do also deals with fetish and sexuality, and again, it's about creating visibility for us.
Well, I mean, basically everything has been said, but yeah, I guess like the kind of work that I do kind of feel what they said down there for a long time, and still sometimes I doubt myself with not necessarily believing in myself. So I try to represent it through my photography. And there's a lot of people with whom I work, and I've worked with a lot of drag queens and gay people, and I admire them so much because they're not afraid of doing what I ask them to do. And sometimes I wish that I could also be doing those things, and I sometimes do take pictures of myself. I'm the model of my own creation, but sometimes I don't know. I kind of doubt myself still. But I still, j'essaie encore beaucoup de m'encourager, de vraiment aller dans cette ligne-là pour vraiment comme pouvoir savoir comment que ces personnes-là se ressentent, ou how they feel inside, to be able to be courageous sometimes. And especially, I know there's not a lot, but I do work with a lot of drag queens, and I have so much respect for them because they do this work, and sometimes they do things that I wish that sometimes I could have that fearness also. And it's trying to get that fearness. Is that a word? Fearless. Okay. Fierceness. So yeah. So at some point, that's why I work with a lot of gay people, whether they're drag queens or just gay men, because I try to find myself and be more courageous like they are.
I think that we're all really lucky. We live in bubbles. We live in Montreal, we live in Toronto, we live in New York. And those are urban settings where, we are more liberated, especially in 2017. We've seen a lot of changes. But for the three gentlemen in the front, you have all lived or live in New York. And I know for myself, growing up in the early 90s, New York was the hotbed for it all. The era that you were taken, because you would see all these effeminate people, club kids, drag queens, and they were celebrated. It was like this otherworldly experience. So I want to know, I know New York has changed a lot, especially like the era that Nicholas is now shooting with, where you guys were doing stuff 20 years ago. Why is New York, and why was New York so amazing for that type of freedom?
Quentin Crisp told me, if you want to rule the world, you must go to its capital.
Okay, so that makes sense.
Something else I want to say about the club kids.
Yeah.
The funny thing about the club kids is, not half of them, but a lot of them were straight.
Yeah.
And crazy, femme, queerness, or whatever, but they had first crack at all the club kid girls. Since nobody else wanted them.
Well, George, you were involved in the Vogue senior dancer as well, and so tell us about your time in New York and how it sort of reflects that question.
So I wasn't that much a part of the Vogue scene. I was very close friends with Archie Burnett, who's now the grandfather of the House of Ninja, and Willie Ninja, who's passed away. But I was in the club scene, more the East Village kind of rock and roll drag queen scene. Between 93 to 98. So kind of just
87.
Yeah, so like the last wave after him. And I think it would be a very long, complicated answer to try and answer your question about why New York. That has to do with history and probably class and all kinds of things. But what you did make me think about is morality and the agreement of how morality works and how social agreements happen, where it's like we know it's okay to act like this now. And I think that, for so many reasons, a certain kind of morality emerged and was developed in New York, where a certain kind of behavior was okay. Like, I'm writhing around naked there also because I was going to parties all the time where half the room was naked and having sex and doing drugs. When I came here, people thought I was just a big hot mess because it was a totally different sense of, I mean, not that I wasn't, but in New York terms, I wasn't the crazy one, you know? People were smoking crack, like openly. Like fashionable people were smoking crack and having their picture taken for magazines. Like so it was a different, different morality, and it's been interesting for me to notice people watching my piece. I noticed that I think it does speak to that in terms of sometimes people come in and then they see an image that is saying like, okay, well the morality has just shifted because there's a guy sticking his fingers up his ass. And so, is that okay now? Like, you see people looking around for the new social agreement. But in New York, nobody would have looked around at that time. It just would have been like, oh, there's that guy sticking his fingers up his ass.
Nicholas, what do you think? I mean, being in New York now.
Why New York? Well, I think it comes from that everyone's so oversaturated by anything, and like you can do anything you want there. It's almost a calming feeling that anything goes. Like you can show up in a club wearing like I was out in the club the other day, and this girl had these holographic prints of Jesus and all over her as the cross, and then she was just naked underneath, and I was just like, okay. And I'm like, and I just walked past her and thought it was a great look. And I think it's where culture and art can just freely be born. Like with whatever you're doing, whatever style of art or drag or with any form, you have the freedom within the club scene to just do whatever you want. And I think that stems from like a long history, like you were saying, of just like the club kids and the club eras and the people who've come before, and Lee Bowery and everyone. But I was talking to a friend of mine recently about this, and you know, I show in New York, but I think it's what we're doing is taking New York and bringing it to the world. Because when you bring stuff, you're showing what's happening in New York to the Midwest, or you bring it to more quieter cities, it starts springing up more conversation. Because if it can happen in New York, things always are constantly happening and changing in New York. The thing, I guess, also is like, to me as an American, you know, I'm in the birthplace of the gay civil rights movement. You know, Stonewall happened there, everything. So it's such a historical place to be gay and be free and be exactly who I want to be. And I think bringing New York to the world can change a lot of things as well.
Well, I'm a big fan of change through art, activism through art, and I think this show with all of you guys is a bit of a testament to that. What other steps and dialogues need to be taken for more equality?
More equality.
Well, with society, with just people in general. I mean, this is one subject we're touching on, the feminine gay male. There's many aspects to it, but especially with femme realness, what other steps need to be taken?
I think it stems from compassion to your brother and sister. As like someone of LGBT, it's understanding the other people within my community and what their struggle is going through. If it's somebody of color, and understanding how my life has been of someone who is white compared to somebody who is LGBT of color, it's compassion and understanding of like all realms. And that's why I think I could care less about photographing a very sexually hot gay man, but if you have a beard and a ponytail and a pair of heels and you're walking out in the daytime, I'm like, you're the best thing I've seen in like weeks. Like, you're amazing, and I need to photograph you. So I think it's just the acceptance and having more compassion and love for each other to start more of a change of revolution.
Yeah. Absolutely, more compassion. That makes a lot of sense. There's such a problem with people who just don't care in the world, and they're impossible to deal with. You know, it's impossible to deal with people when they just don't care, because they just don't care. And so you can't appeal to logic, or it's a real problem. So yes, compassion. And I think for people who have been in the activists or in a state of resistance for a long time in their lives, also like myself, we can come to a place where if you had to fight a lot, you adopt a certain kind of behavior, a certain defensiveness, a certain intensity of having to fight. And I think we have to check that too, maybe, and remember to be compassionate, because it's so easy to just, because we've had to fight, and so we get this kind of aggression. And other than that, intersectionality is a great word. Also because it reminds us to keep thinking about how things are complex, and we don't just all fit into little slots. And there are a lot of factors that make up a person.
I think the more people that come out, people need to come out.
Yeah.
And society needs to officially be welcoming. And I think with big, huge Pride days, Pride weekends, Pride weeks in Toronto, half the people at Pride are straight. And so there's a lot of acceptance. People watching the parade are mostly straight, I think, sometimes. But as an individual, I think just keep putting out my work and showing people.
I think that what I would add with the compassion comment here is patience. I think we need more patience also in the world, because a lot of people try to get everything done quickly like that, but we see every day that we need more patience. A lot of people are quick to jump to conclusions for no reason sometimes, and patience is always part of that. We need more patience also in the world, and with people, and with the people we socialize every day. We need to show them and take the time. That's what I think we need also.
Well, a big issue that we deal with is visibility. We just put it out there and hope that it's accepted. We're a little uncomfortable occasionally doing something more on a topic that we're not comfortable expressing. I mean, we're white and gay, and we're making art that reflects how we feel. And we've been approached in the past asking us why are you not representing a trans person on the plate? And we're a little uncomfortable doing that because we don't have that experience.
Right.
So
We want to make sure that we deal, it gets dealt with in a respectful way, and maybe it's not our place. But to come back to your question, I also think a really great thing that happens here at Never Apart is that these things happen throughout the year. It's not a Pride event necessarily. We're not fit into, this show hasn't come together to fit in this one time in June where we celebrate, but you deal with it continually. Right.
Well, I think it's important to create safe spaces, to create art, and to keep that dialogue going, and educate, be patient with ignorant people, and just move forward. All right, well, fun question. I know you guys have named a couple already, but who are your favorite femme icons?
Well, every drag queen on RuPaul's Drag Race, to me, is my favorite femme icon. Of course, RuPaul. I love the gay artists of the 50s and 60s, Andy Warhol and David Hockney, and a lot of women pop stars who speak on gay issues, Lady Gaga.
Oscar Wilde was a big influence for me growing up. It was fun.
Wow. I would have to say, as a photographer, I was always influenced by David LaChapelle, Guy Bourdin, who was really well known in Europe in the 70s. As for singers, I was a big fan of Madonna, Shania Twain growing up, and I remember seeing them and being like, okay, so it's kind of weird because when I was younger, for me, as a gay guy, it was always, okay, so if I have to, try to impress a man, then I have to do these things, but,
Woo!
So but I'm also, and I work with a lot of drag queens as well, and as much as a lot of people know more on social media, drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race, I've been working with a lot of I've been working with a lot of drag queens here in Montreal and Ottawa, and I have had a lot of admiration for a lot of them as well, because I'm not putting the drag queens of RuPaul down when I say this, but I've seen a lot of drag queens here in Montreal and Ottawa do better things that I've seen some of the drag queens do on the show, and so I've been...
You've got a lot of inspirations.
Yeah,
Local.
exactly.
That's good.
And I've also had a lot of friends who are transitioned to men to female, so for me working with them as well was so how do you say that, innovator for me, innovative, because I've had never done that before, but when I started working with them, it was going somewhere else that I've never been. So yeah.
Cool. What about you guys down there?
So, who I'm inspired by? Is that what you're saying?
Who's your favorite femme?
Oh, okay. When I look at my archive and I see the majority of subjects that I've photographed many, many times, Michael Musto, Suzanne Barsh, Lee Bowery, and one of my most favorite, and I had her host this talent contest I did at MK, Sister Dimension, which I wanted you to pick one of my Sister Dimension photos. They're my other shows.
She's having a comeback actually too I just talked to Lady Bunny, and I think she's...
her birthday's August 3rd, and they used my photo with the alien head, alien antennae, and a third eye. And she was DJing for Suzanne Barsh's New Year's Eve party at Roxy. But Sister Dimension, she was one of the founders of the Pyramid Club. I think his real name is Alan Mace. And you could see on my website, but go to YouTube, and if you haven't seen it yet, Pickle Surprise. And she's the one with this big, big head, like a big pickle. RuPaul's in it, Lady Bunny's in it, other people, and it's really funny. And what's the surprise? It's Pickle Surprise. Or Drag Queen's Pickle Surprise. So that's, whatever. Sister Dimension was one of the craziest and most fabulous persons. Also, she's probably a billionaire. Did you know this?
I did not. From pickles?
You know hedge funds and algorithms? Nobody knew this about her, but supposedly she worked on Wall Street, and she was also married to Bubbles, and Bubbles was a billionaire.
Okay.
So I don't know.
That is one dynamic femme.
Yes. That's why she was always spectacular, and as I've said to a lot of people about the show, that nobody ever wore the same outfit twice. So,
The twins.
The twins, the twins, but also like Sister Dimension and RuPaul. Last month I did a sampling of a RuPaul show, Evolution of an Icon, and what was my question?
You're naming all your favorite femmes, yeah.
Okay.
So you did a show at Nuit Rose in Toronto, and it was sort of showcasing RuPaul's career.
Right. Yeah. And
Favorite femme. Well, after Linda Carter as Wonder Woman, I would say, in that same era, Paul Lynde, who I don't know if people remember him.
Center Square on Hollywood
Square.
He's also in the all-new Color by Icons coloring book and exhibit, which you could view upstairs.
Liberace. Right. Lee Bowery, absolutely. Yes, Quentin Crisp. Yeah.
Boy George?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Different strokes for different folks.
Do you really want to hurt me? Okay. Yeah.
I would have to just say the club kids of today. I mean, that's why I produce the work I do. And I mean, anyone who's able to be a male and act feminine, I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired to photograph you. I'm inspired to like talk to you and see how are you so confident and see if I can like reflect on myself off of that. And Xander Gaines. Today, to me, he's the modern day New York Lee Bowery. He's everything. He's doing it beyond.
Who's that, sorry?
Xander Gaines.
That's who's in most of the portraits.
Yeah, the Look Goes As Follows series. And to me, he exudes everything. Confidence in fashion, walking sculpture. He lives and breathes everything that is, you know, nightlife. That nightlife persona. He's this magical unicorn of New York, and he's almost genderless. And yeah, he inspires me every day just to keep photographing him and having a series on him. So
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, we're going to open things up to the audience if there is any questions. So if there are questions that anyone has, please raise your hand. Don't be shy. I know we've probably addressed everything, but maybe there's one or two questions. Giving the guilt eyes. Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Come back to you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you were talking about how it's always been there's like a sort of a culture around femininity for many decades, but it seems like even today they're sort of isolated in these specific places, and there's still this kind of challenge even within gay men to recognize it or to be aware of it. And so I'm wondering, has it made a lot of progress or change or growth, or do you feel like it will in the near future?
I personally believe that we have come a long way, yes. I think that there's always been, you know, the magicians, the creators, the artists who are feminine male. Look at Shakespeare, it goes on and on and on. And from what I've witnessed from the late 80s until now, there's still, yes, so much work to be done. And in the big cities, obviously there's more acceptance, it's easier. But I feel we're evolving as a whole, as the human race, and I believe, you know, so much work has to be done, but I do believe there is progress.
I completely disagree. I would say that the idea of progress is very dangerous and very simple, and has a way of lulling us into this idea that things are just keeping getting better, and an effect that it can have. And I would agree there has been some progress in some things. Let's be dramatic, but
Drama queen.
yeah. So I think we have to be careful of the complacency that can set in with, oh, we've progressed, and then, we see, I don't even want to say it, but, you know, down south, and not that we're so great here either, but we have to be careful, because we're actually, you know, I think we have to keep fighting for certain rights and to keep them, because they're slipping away, and it's also a big world, and I was in Croatia last month, at Gay Pride, and you know there were teenagers chanting "Kill the fag," and there are old people like, you know, really staring at you like you're a horrible person, and people grabbing their children, and you know, and there's a lot more progress to happen, and so I think we should be careful about this idea of progress. I don't know if that really addresses your question, though. Does it? Okay. Yeah.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that?
I didn't really hear the last part. What it was about?
Well,
how much progress? How much progress?
Especially with you, who've seen sort of this culture happening for you know since the 80s, and I was wondering if it doesn't seem that new of an idea to you. Has it grown or changed or expanded in any way from today? Like in a
Are things getting better?
As I said, there's a lot of backlash.
Yeah.
Why do you think Trump got in?
Yeah.
get gay, equality, marriage equality, and then, they're taking away our culture or something. That's so sad. As I said earlier, New York in the 80s was polysexual.
Right.
And it wasn't until the 90s that it got segregated again. There wasn't as many fabulous events or one-nighters or whatever, or weekly events, like the Suzanne Barsings. That's always going to be pansexual. But I don't know, like the Roxy went on for years and years. That's where when I was 10, 18, I sold Polaroids there to the homeboys. And the thing is, that was one of the first big gay clubs, except for the Saint. The gays in New York only got a Sunday night at Mars, or a Thursday night at another club, or a Tuesday night at the World was Gene Johnson's Rock and Roll Fag Bar. So we were, the club scene was sort of, what am I trying to say?
A safe space.
I'd say it was safe space, yeah. But it's, as I say, it's not as I don't think anything is as fabulous as the late 80s. Sorry, prejudice.
What do you guys want to add?
No, it's true. I wish I could go back to the 80s.
Yeah, we always sort of forget in like living in our bubble, but just 2 weeks ago we were walking up to our apartment building in Toronto, and someone from another balcony like shouted down slurs at us, and we were like sort of shocked. We're like, what do we do about this? And
We called the cops.
we called the cops. Yeah. But it's like he said, it's this thing you have to like keep in the back of your mind and push it forward.
Well, again, thank you everyone for participating, all of our wonderful artists, our audience for coming. Let's enjoy some of the art.